I'm Neve, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
Hello. People are a little unclear on the pronunciation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as a fan of comic books, horror movies, and comedy, the combination of creative people involved in this film makes it super exciting to me. I mean, yeah, just from the source material to obviously Jay. So what can you tell me about how you became aware of this and what made you want to be involved?
I auditioned. I literally just auditioned. I mean, I've been one thing I really appreciate about Jay is that I mean, pretty much in any film that he's been like a creator on, he really like hires a lot of Canadian talent. Whether it's
I was gonna say you're Canadian.
Yeah. Like I live in Toronto, he lives in Toronto.
Yeah.
But whether it's whether it's like behind the scenes or not, it's he hires a lot of Canadian talents. And yeah, honestly, I've just been working in Canada since I was really, really young, and I was like working at a bike shop, and I had this interview or this audition, and I shipped it on over to the audition, and I heard like, I don't know, maybe a week or two later that I'd booked it off the first. I didn't even have a callback, which was wild because that normally happens. So
yeah.
My dog's crying.
No worries.
Okay. And
my dog is with his mom, or with her mom, or else she'd be here right now.
She'd also be crying. Hi.
And she'd also be crying.
Do you want to come up? Here.
Yeah, I want to meet your dog.
A little dog.
Oh my gosh, the dachshund.
Little puppy.
Puppy.
But
I have a corgi.
Pardon?
I have a corgi.
Oh, we love a low to the ground dog.
Exactly.
Love a short leg dog.
Exactly.
Yeah. I literally I just went to this audition, and then I remember like the script being really fun, and that Jay was like, doing everything on it. And then I got a call like a week or two later, and they were just like, yeah, you booked it if you want to sign the contract. And I was like, yeah, yes, I do. That was really about it.
Perfect. And obviously this is not, I mean, people who are familiar with you will know this isn't your first experience in the genre. Are you starting to feel like a bit of a scream queen yet, having done a lot of movies in this realm?
Well, I actually I veered away from it for quite a few years. It was like growing up was funny because as a kid, it was pretty much all I did for the first, I don't know, 6 or some odd years of my career, and
playing in things that you weren't allowed to see.
Yeah. Or like wasn't even allowed to know like the content about. Like wow. I remember being in a movie called The Marsh. I'm still friends with the director Jordan to this day, but I was like 6 or 7, and I think and like in the film, like I'm pretty sure it's like implied that my character is like assaulted or sexually assaulted or something. Like I didn't know that when I was filming. I had no clue. I didn't find out until like I was a teenager. But yeah, no, it was weird. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's quite all right. It's the best kind of interruption.
You guys want to go inside? Here we go. Yeah, and then that kind of like led me to like doing horror for however many years. I thought I was really gonna get pigeonholed into that genre. Mm-hmm. And now if that happened now, I would be so fine with it. Like I love horror movies. If I only acted in horror movies for the rest of my life, I'd be pleased. I'd be quite pleased.
I mean, and there's conventions to go to and signings.
People that work on them are dope. Like it's just great time. But yeah, for quite a few years, like 2018 was a weird year because I pretty much between 2010 or 11 and And like 2018, I didn't do any horror. So it was like the first 6 years of my career were like only horror and thriller. And then like 8 years of like Family Channel and teeny bopper things. And then 2018, it was like I worked on a really small horror film set. And then the next month I like booked Random Acts of Violence. I was like, oh,
I'm back.
where I wanted to be.
Yeah, that rules.
But like, I do feel like a love and affinity for horror and like working on the sets and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I like that, it's like the fact that horror is kind of having like this resurgence or like this like renaissance in terms of like what a horror movie actually is.
Yeah.
Is great because I've always like really enjoyed working on those kinds of productions. And so for it to be now kind of with films like this and films like a lot of the films that Jordan Peele is doing, like he kind of like put forward this new movement in horror, and now people are taking it more seriously as like as a legitimate genre.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that could like continue, that would be great.
Yeah, and given the you know the sorry state of movies with the pandemic and all of that, we've had some great horror films this year. You know, I just watched The Rental recently, which is Dave Franco's directorial debut. It stars his wife Alison Brie, and it's just a great small horror film. The Invisible Man was like surprisingly amazing.
I've heard from many people that it was really, really great.
That was the last film premiere that I went to before COVID. So that's like that's my last memory of like being in a big theater.
Yeah.
Watching
well, I guess not so much horror, but or just like weird psychological thrillers. Like I've seen like a lot of really interesting ones amidst everything that's going on. Maybe it's like I don't know if the release dates were kind of bumped up or if, you know, things were like, oh, this is a good time. Like production companies were like, this is a good time to release this kind of content.
I'm in quarantine. Now I want to watch The Hunt.
Yeah. Now I want to watch all of these like movies where everyone else is like in a really screwed up situation. And
yeah, we're all living in The Shining right now. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think speaking of Alison Brie, I saw Horse Girl. Isn't really it's not a horror film, but it is really.
But it's weird.
It's very weird. I remember finishing watching it and being like, wait. And
that's like kind of a quarantine.
Person
going crazy. Yeah. Is this stuff really happening? We don't really know. Yeah,
which is the overarching feeling of this entire year. So. Yeah,
that movie has one of those kind of unreliable narrator vibes where it's like, where the story is being told through this point of view of a person where we don't know if they're crazy or not.
Yeah.
Those are fun, and that's a certain type of horror. So Jimmy Palmiotti.
Yes.
Speaking of pronunciation, that's probably harder than your first name. But he's a comic legend, and he's worked on Deadpool and Harley Quinn, and I mean I remember him doing a bunch of Marvel stuff when I was a kid. And I know he has said in the press that he was really happy to have Jay come in and adapt this and be part of it.
Jay's like a huge comic book nerd and has his own, company.
Yeah.
For comics, and I would see why if you were somebody who's like been working in it for a really long time, you would want someone like Jay who's involved in that area.
Yeah.
Literature and everything to like
another medium that's being taken way more seriously these days.
Yeah. Comic books are great. I grew up reading a lot of, less so comics. I read a lot of graphic novels growing up because I am really bad at reading. I have a really, I have pretty aggressive ADD. So like sitting down to read a book was really difficult, but sitting down to like read a graphic novel was a great time because I got to read
there's something different about it. The experience, yeah, it's a little more immersive in a sense. I suppose a lot of people would argue that the other way, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's a different kind of relaxation, you know. And I mean, and it's funny when you hear people say that they don't read. Oh, I don't read. I should read more. I'm like, you stare at your phone all day.
Yeah,
you're clicking on articles in Twitter. That counts.
Yeah, it's just like you're doing the like short spurts of reading.
Yeah,
which is what I'm catered.
Yeah,
little bits of time. Yeah, exactly. I can take it more at a time. Yeah.
So, as an actor, are you someone when something's adapted from another source material? Do you go off the script because you don't want to be influenced by the comic, or do you read the comic also, or do you wait till you're done? Or
it's kind of a case by case basis. I feel like if I'm really struggling to find inspiration or like really struggling to connect with a character, that's when I kind of go to outside sources or like go to like the original source. Like I just had an audition the other week for a movie that was based on a book I read when I was a teenager. And so going back to like not really having a clue of like what this character was based on the breakdown that I was given, going back to that book and like and referencing that book was really, really helpful for me. With Random, it was like from the very first audition, like I had such an understanding of Aurora just based on who I was as a person. And from, you know, reading the background, like I didn't actually read the comic, but going in and like knowing what it was all about and reading about the characters and doing my research on that end definitely informed the relationships and how, you know, how I thought about those relationships when working on the film. But I had such a strong, like, I felt like I had such a strong character choice and such an idea of how I wanted her to be played right from the get-go. I didn't want to influence that in any way.
Yeah.
And having Jay kind of at the head of it all and being like, yeah, we like what you're doing. We love what you're doing. It was kind of like, okay, cool. I don't want to like second guess myself in any way. Mm-hmm. I don't want to influence that side of my character while I was playing it. But now that it's out and I've like seen the movie as is, I'm like, oh, I like really want to go in and actually like read the comic and see what Aurora really was. And yeah, it was. So I didn't consult the comic for that, but there's been a couple things I've done that have been based on like books or other pieces of media. And it's, again, it's always like a case by case situation.
Yeah, because in some instances, the amount of material that's out there would be overwhelming. I would imagine if, you know, when people get cast in a Marvel movie, it's like, well, are they going to read, 50 years worth of comics to feel like they're informed, or should they approach it like they would another movie and just get with the director or get with the script?
Yeah.
Figure out an approach to the character that way, or you always see Mark Ruffalo. He makes the joke that playing the Hulk is like playing Hamlet. Every actor has a turn, so it's like if you're so it's like you don't need to, so case by case, like you said. So when you tell your friends about this movie,
yes,
what do you tell them? How do you describe it when you're like, okay, I'm in this new movie?
It's been that's actually a great question because I'm still struggling to to describe it to my friends. Generally, one of the first things I say is like listing off the people that are in it, because then they go, oh, like I know all those people and that's why I want to see it. Also, you're in it, and like that's the first thing. And then I'll be like, also it's scary, but also it's funny. But also it's really gory. Like it's just, I can't remember what I described it to, or like a friend of a friend, or a friend described it to one of their friends or something, and used like, an improvisational technique on like gore porn was like the words they used or something. It's like, It was like a lot of the stuff that you see in the movie was improvised, or just like us, like the ball rolling or
Wow.
shit, based off of the script. But yeah, it was like really us just getting going, and that kind of was what Jay told us he wanted, to just, like get in the moment, connect with each other, and then use the script to sort of inform like all the little bits and pieces that you throw in between your lines.
That's rad. I mean, he has a lot of experience making stuff that way based on, I mean, This Is the End is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh,
I can only imagine that group of people probably had a lot of
my word. It was on for the actual, like, I guess like would have been the premiere, like, or like the North American premiere, was in my hometown of Oakville, Ontario.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, at a drive-in theater that I've been to many times in my life. But it was on a double bill of Random Acts and then This Is the End right after.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. And also drive-ins are definitely making a comeback right now, which I don't like the circumstances, but I like that fact.
I do love a drive-in. I really do. And I mean, back to your question of how I would describe it to people, like trying to get my friends to go to that, I was like, so I'm in this thing, like you can come if you want, you don't really have to come, like it's gonna be out, you're gonna be able to see it and stuff, but it's like a funny, like horror style, but
it's a great drive-in movie.
Very like intersectional in terms of genre.
Yeah, that rules. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Goon movies. And I'm not even like a big hockey guy, but another thing that Jay did. So yeah, he seems like he would be so much fun to work with.
It was, but also the Goon movies are great. A lot of people that worked on, not a lot, but like there was definitely like a portion of the crew that worked on Random Acts of Violence that had also worked on Goon, and yeah,
because I think that was the last movie he directed before yours, right? So that makes sense.
So. But yeah, it was like, it's great being like, oh, like how do you know, how are you associated with Jay, or how are you associated with the production? And some people were like, oh, like I knew someone, or they'd be like, oh, I worked on the Goon movies and it was great. And it's like, I love it. I love that it's like a closed kind of community and just very small and connected.
Was there any scene that comes to mind, that isn't too spoilerific, that was the most challenging for you, whether in terms of the physical demand of it, or a scene where, one of those days when you're going into work and you're like, oh, today's the day I gotta do this scene?
It's like I want to say that there is, it really isn't. Like all of them, every scene, or like every day going in was like so much fun.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it was a lot of fun.
So much fun, like so much fun. And it was never, if there was ever like a scene that I was coming in that I was like, oh, this is like, it's gonna be a day, it wasn't because of like the actual set. It was because I was also working on another film intermittently. Random Acts of Violence, like the dates directly overlapped. So I was working, like I worked like every single day, weekends included, for travel or like study or learning lines or anything, for like, I think like 30 some odd days straight or something. Because I was like traveling from wherever we were shooting on Random Acts, which was all over the place, like all over in and around Toronto areas and like kind of in the boonies as well. And then going up north to Aurelia to work on like a rom-com. And it was like day shoots to night shoots. And some of the time I was driving myself and some of the time I was being picked up, but it was just like a really hectic time. But never once was I going in to the set of Random Acts and being like, wow, shit, today's going to be a day. It was always like, I'm so excited. What day is it going to be? Is it going to be the kind of day, like, are we all going to have a great time? Or are we all going to be shooting the shit? Is it going to be like, so it was just, yeah, it was a new sort of fun experience every time I went in. I guess the one scene that would probably be like the most challenging would have been, there's a scene where I'm like sitting on the park bench or like on a picnic table and like after a convention and I'm sitting and I'm drawing. That one was probably like the most the weirdest spot to get into emotionally, because she's like trying to draw this like super horrible thing that they saw. And like my process of experiencing those emotions is drawing on my real life experiences or somewhere from inside.
Sure.
So I guess that would have been the most like emotionally strenuous, but in general, like it was just fun. We were all just hanging out, really chatting, goofing.
Well, you know what's really killer about this movie, no pun intended, as we're talking about this resurgence of horror and the way that it's being viewed in kind of the cultural context right now. And yeah, like you said, all the stuff Jordan Peele's been doing and, you know, these films that are, I mean, you know, Get Out, for example, is structured like a very classical horror film structure, but it's also, you know, an Oscar bait movie. And what's great about Random Acts is that this is a certified fresh film, because we're used to a lot of horror films that are, even if they're beloved in the horror community and cool, likable, fun films, they don't always align with critic sensibilities.
Yeah.
One of those horror films that, I want to say it's 80-something% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Usually
it's not even just fresh, it's like up there. I mean, that's got to feel gratifying to be like, oh, okay, this is a genre movie that is also crossed over to respectability, which is a rare thing.
I was actually like, I was visiting my parents, and my mom and me were just sitting down to watch a movie, and she was scrolling through like video on demand, and Random Acts of Violence came up. And at that time, I'm not sure what the score is on it now, but at that time it was like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, wait, what? That's super dope. Like, that's super cool. All I did was act in it. I didn't really make any part of it. I just showed up at work. So just to even be like part of it was like, oh shit. Like, I'm so glad people recognize this as being like as cool as it was to film. Because I was like psyching out. I was psyched out the whole time.
Okay, I just looked 85%. I mean, that is killer. I mean, and you see movies that brag in their marketing materials if they just barely made it into fresh. It's like certified fresh, and this is high. I mean, and especially in a year when there's not much out there. So that's so cool. It's an added bonus. I mean, obviously that's not why you do a movie, but when it then happens,
it's still cool. I think that the main thing that I'm like excited about is I just working with Jay, like, you know how excited he was about this film and about like he's been working on it for like almost 10 years. And so to go from writing it and then getting funding and producing it and directing it and starring in it, like, and then having it come out and it being really well received, is like every time I hear someone say something good about the film or you know, I read a good review, I'm like, oh, Jay must be so happy that it's like out and he's like, and his baby is now like in the world.
Right.
One of the first things that usually come to mind is like, I'm excited for me because it's like a great thing to be a part of, but mostly it's just like, damn, like I really hope he feels really proud and excited about the whole thing and that people are really recognizing it for and liking it as much as like he loved, you know, making it. Yeah. So I'm excited about it and everything, but mostly I see those good reviews. So I'm like,
yay, Jay!
Yeah,
Canada! Yeah. So speaking of Canada, one last thing I wanted to ask you about while I've got you. You know, and this film obviously, you know, dealing with the creative arts in a sense, and like, you know, the characters in the movie and everything. And we talked a little bit about fandom and how much the horror community embraces its own. Talk to me about Degrassi fandom, because that's a whole fandom in and of itself. And I know, you know, Kevin Smith and like there's like, you know, there's famous nerds who love Degrassi also.
So
Is that you know, what's that community like?
weird. It's weird. I would say like the horror, like I feel like people generally think like the horror fandom is pretty fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is weirder than like teen soap fandoms.
Yeah.
It's a very strange world. Like working on Degrassi was it was the first time when people were like really knew my personal information or thought my personal information or like just like knew things about my character I didn't even know. Yeah. I'm like, oh, y'all are so involved. There's a wiki. Like, it's just, it's a really strange. And I think the weirdest thing about it for me was like, it filmed in Toronto. And so, you know, walking around in Toronto, everybody's like very chill about it. No, I don't actually think that many Canadian people watch Degrassi. And so like I would walk around in Toronto and be like, oh, like you're on Degrassi. I'd be like, yeah. And they're like, super dope. And that was pretty much it. The times it got like really crazy was like when people from out of province or out of the country were like, you're on Degrassi. I was like, yes. It was like I feel like the predominant part of like the crazy part of the fandom were people that weren't from around here.
Yeah.
Most of the people who are like, maybe it's just because Toronto was so desensitized to like.
Yeah, I mean it's normalized and there's hometown pride and there's also probably a level of distance where it's like,
yeah,
let's be chill and leave them be so they'll stay here and keep, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't want to make it hard for the show to film there.
It's a weird.
Yeah, I mean, teen soap fandoms in general, I mean, I have a soft spot for, and, you know, it crosses over into some genre also, but, you know, I watched The Vampire Diaries and the originals, and those fandoms, you know, like on Twitter, they would get angry about story choices, you know, and would be tweeting at executive producers and writers and stuff about this person dating that person instead of this person, and like, they get like really, really connected and involved in those storylines.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think mostly, like, I think one of the biggest things was like when I was a teen, when I was working on Degrassi, like the character I played was a lesbian, and like everyone outside of the industry was like, you must be a lesbian. Like,
right.
And me as a teenager, like, I was like, no, I'm not. Like, why would you think that? Like, why would you associate me with like my character like that? And now me as like the adult that I am, I'm like, we're all gay. I'm gay. You're gay. We're all gay, right?
It's a spectrum. Yeah.
Like, I'm living my gayest life. Like, I'm loving it. But the way that like the fans would connect me and associate me with like my character was crazy, because it was nowhere near as confident or cool or established as my character, and so people thinking that of me was very strange to me.
Yeah, but nice and supportive. I mean, because you were playing like, you know, a drug-addled serial killer, and people are like, "Oh, you're a drug-addled serial killer." That
must be you. You must be that.
Yeah.
That person gets like a lot of individual hate. Meanwhile, I was like, this is one thing that's been really interesting to me. Is like a lot of actors. It's different for big celebrities and everything, but actors getting hate based on characters that they choose to play. Obviously, if you're a big old name, big old celeb, you have, you know, the power and the money to say, no, that's not an appropriate role for me to play.
Yeah, or you have enough. You're established so much as that person outside of the work.
Yeah,
that people can see you in the work, and yeah. I mean, speaking of teen soaps, I mean, you know, way back in the day, me being an old man, the original 90210, there was a character who was Donna's boyfriend for a while, and he was a musician in real life, and his character was a musician. And there was an episode where he threw Donna down a flight of stairs, and as legend has it, that ruined his career in real life.
Really?
Because people so associated him, especially because he was playing a singer on the show and was a singer in real life and had a hit song in real life. Yeah. People were like, "Oh, that guy, he's Donna's abusive boyfriend. He threw Donna down the stairs," and then he's never to be heard from again.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
We don't support him here. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But then I think I'm like, well, somebody even in my situation, or like where, you know, I still audition for stuff. Like I can't pick and choose my roles. Like some people have that luxury. And you know, I'm a pretty average, normal human being. I'm like still figuring out my way in film and TV, and it's been, you know, my whole life. And so people like in that situation where, you know, there's a role that, you know, becomes available to you, and you're like, oh, this is my job, and like kind of need to jump at this opportunity.
Of course.
It's like, if that's a problematic role and you get shit for it, it's like, damn, like I really was just trying to make my way. Like,
yeah. And it's a role. It's acting.
It's acting, like what I want to do. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I haven't had, you know, any roles where I've felt incredibly conflicted about the content, or, I mean, maybe not the content, but like the, you know, the character themselves.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I haven't ever been put in a situation where I have to, you know, worry about that kind of thing, and that I still have some, you know, some ability to say no to things. But yeah, definitely like characters or like actors who get so associated with their role when, you know, they were just trying to work or trying to do their job. I'm like, damn, the audiences can be brutal.
Yeah, indeed, but can also be so passionately loving.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
it seems disproportionately brutal on the internet because the internet brings out the worst in a lot of people.
True, especially Twitter.
Yeah, the empty can rattles the most. Yeah, Twitter can't be mean.
Twitter's really mean. I remember, I scroll through Twitter sometimes just to, you know, it sort of reveals things that you wouldn't necessarily find on the news. And yeah, people are vicious.
You know, they just introduced this week a new feature where when you're composing your tweet, you can set who's allowed to reply to it. So only people you follow can reply to it, or there's like little, and that's pretty cool. I think that's going to weed out a lot of, you know,
a lot of poison.
Yeah. So last question.
Yeah.
And don't feel pressured to say Slipknot. It is not obligatory, but what have you been listening to in quarantine?
Oh my God. That's actually a great question, because I feel like I normally have like can name off like 80,000 artists off the top of my head, and I've been listening to a lot of like early 2000s R&B.
Nice.
I don't know if it's because my boyfriend is an R&B singer, and like that's his whole jam, and like that's what he grew up listening to, and so what I know, like if I put it on in the house, like everyone's gonna be happy with what we're listening to. But a lot of early 2000s.
I'm trying to think early 2000s. So would that be like Usher?
So, yeah, and also like some just like, I mean, I don't even know what decades I'm listening to most of the time, but I've been listening. What was I listening to the other day? Why am I escaping? Why are all the names of all the artists escaping me? I've been listening to, I have a specific playlist that I have to get out because it's like, it's important to me.
Get it. That's the beauty of the Zoom too, is we're all like in our little habitats.
Yeah. Okay.
Like when I was like, what was that Rotten Tomato score? Oh yeah, I'm at my computer.
85. I think this is also, and not actually less so R&B. I have been listening to a lot of that, maybe more recent R&B, but I've also been listening to like I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but like a lot
That's
of
even more fun.
Shania Twain.
Nice.
And this is what I mean is like it's not early 2000s R&B, but like I have been listening to that as well, but mostly playlist
Let's give them something to talk about.
Naked on the Floor, TLC, you know.
I was gonna say TLC, but then yeah, but they're I think of them as more 90s.
Yeah,
but they did bleed into the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm. I listen to a lot of Janet Jackson too.
Janet's rad. TLC is rad. Left Eye, rest in peace.
Oh,
He was my favorite.
Man.
Of the three.
God bless. And but a new artist I've really been listening to that I like a lot is her name's Begonia. I guess she's probably not new, but
I'm not familiar. What kind of stuff is it?
Smooth, like jazzy indie pop R&B, like the most mix of genres, but like definitely some like feel like some good R&B influence, but also some like indie pop, which isn't even really a genre. Like I hate that indie is a genre.
No, but I know what you mean. And a lot of stuff that gets described as indie pop, if anything, it's just differentiating it from pop.
Yeah, exactly.
And
like I'm not gonna say she's like Ariana Grande, but right. I'm not gonna say that she's not poppy.
It's not The Cure.
It's not. Yeah, or I'm not listening to The Cure or the Smiths.
Yeah.
Begonia is really good. And I feel like I've been trying to listen to like a lot of like uplifting tunes or like tunes that make me feel a little better than quarantine does.
Yeah, I was gonna say, feel like you're not locked inside your house.
Yeah. And a friend of mine just released an album that's really, really good, and her name's Elio. She just released a EP, and I've been jamming out to that a lot. There's some like really good like poppy tunes, some good
upbeat and uplifting is helpful right now.
But it's funny because like I feel like most of the time I listen to, oh my god, I feel like my taste is constantly changing. I have like years where I go through phases, like years where I just like listen to folk, and years where I exclusively listen to punk and pop punk and things like that.
Yeah, I go through like goth phase, Britpop phase, doom metal, thrash metal. Yeah, it's like I know exactly what you mean, and that's what's great about having so much music available at our fingertips these days.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't cost you $18 to take a chance on something.
No, but I still do it sometimes when I've been at music stores and someone's I remember at a music store somebody was the guy who was like at the cash was just like, you should listen to this record, and it was like a Joy of Cooking album. I was like, I've never heard of. I don't know. Sure, yes, if you say so.
Well, that's that classic record store experience, which I definitely don't knock. If you can find an indie record store with a nerdy clerk that can recommend things to you, that's a lost art.
Yeah.
As someone who used to be that record store clerk.
Oh, good.
I will forever salute that.
That's my favorite kind of person.
High fidelity. That was my life. My friends and I were the people that saw that movie and were like, we know someone who's just like that character. We know someone just like that character.
That's Johnny. That's Ricky. We know all these people.
That's our culture.
It's we're represented.
Representation for record nerds. Exactly.
I am.
Exactly.
But yeah, all of my music friends that have just been like, oh, you like this artist? Like, let me recommend this artist. I'm like, you're just never stop being friends with me because I want you around for a long time.
Yeah, I had a friend, actually, one of my best friends just yesterday recommended a band to me that's actually been around for a while that I had never heard. They were called Crippled Black Phoenix. And they described their music as end time ballads. And I was like, I'm in. End time ballads, I was like, you know me very well.
Also very appropriate for the times.
Exactly.
Love that. Yeah. What have you been listening to recently other than that?
Wow, let's see that. And Typo Negative is always my go-to. Some nice romantic dark doom metal. It's funny you mentioned the Smiths. I'm a huge Morrissey. Even though Morrissey's been canceled by a lot of fans, I'm not canceling him. I'm not canceling his music.
I also don't even know who's been canceled anymore. I'm like,
right, who can keep up? Yeah, and he's been canceled for like things he said, which to me is a lot different than people who are doing terrible things. That's one story.
yes.
People who are saying things that everyone doesn't agree with, like, I mean, if I had to do like a thought audit on every artist, every filmmaker, you know what I mean? It's like you wouldn't have anything to listen to because no one's going to see everything the same way you do. But
like people say shitty things all the time, and also if they were a long time ago, it's probably because everyone else was shitty, and they were probably picking up on everyone else being shitty too.
Right. There's also that. And I have a Morrissey tattoo, so I can't really get away from it.
Yeah. Well, everyone said some shitty things, and I know Austin said some real shitty things, and I'm also a different person than I was literally 6 months ago.
Right.
Constantly changing. Constantly knowing.
Thank God they're not reading our minds and putting it on Twitter all day, or we'd all be I feel like that's the next step.
Yeah, I was going to say Musk is going to come out with something tomorrow and be like, actually, you know what? Tweet directly from his brain.
Yeah, exactly. Do it. But that Crippled Black Phoenix was a really cool discovery. There's a group called Photocrime, just spelled FOTO, which is a very 80s sort of new wave gothic pop.
Photocrime.
That's really cool. That's been my favorite record this year, I think, so far. And a bunch of metal stuff that I'll dub in later. I mean, I've been listening to nothing but the new Slipknot and Corey Taylor's new solo song.
Yeah, all of the
I know they don't want that for their site. The site is definitely very broad and everything, and I do like Slipknot. But yeah, that's been what I've been listening to lately.
That's awesome.
So yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Me? I got nothing to do. The film industry's going right now? No.
Well, this is what I do for a living, and it's fun. I chose to do something that I enjoy, which is meeting new people who are doing creative and cool and interesting things, and sitting around and talking about it. And I'll tell you, having covered film for a long time, as much as there's to be said for being in person, I prefer this to meeting you at the Four Seasons in a room for 3 minutes at a time where 50 other people have been interviewing you all day, asking you the same 3 questions. What was it like to work with so-and-so? Like, I've done enough of those for a lifetime. So this is one positive about the pandemic, is it's forcing us to adapt to, oddly enough, more human conversation via remote. If that makes sense.
It's like we stare at screens all day anyway.
Right.
Use some of that screen time to like actually interact with a human being.
Exactly.
But I agree. I mucho prefer this. Also because like going to Four Seasons and sitting down for 3 minutes at a time, I'd be like, this isn't me.
Right.
I don't vibe with this. Let's go get a beer. Like
right. It's a very strange performative way to have a conversation. And there are people who are really great at it, and there are ways that you can kind of break the ice and maybe get something exciting from it. But yeah, it's very rarely are you going to get more than I had an excellent time on this. I enjoyed working with so-and-so, and and then you're done.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also part of like, I guess that's part of the job.
It's part of the job.
Yeah. It's when people ask about something that you haven't talked about. Like, I've never talked about the Degrassi fandom before. So,
yes. Yeah, I'll take it. I did something different. Yeah, I used to actually go to press junkets. A technique that I developed over a couple of years is I would try to think about what the most common question was that day, knowing that the person's talking to like 50 reporters.
Yeah.
And, for example, I interviewed Paul Walker once, a couple times, but one time I interviewed Paul Walker, rest in peace. and he was in this Richard Donner time travel movie that nobody ended up seeing. But I went in and I sat down and I said, so Paul, if you could travel back anywhere in time you want to go, where would you go? Yeah. And he starts answering me and I go, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to ask you that fucking question. And he like literally almost fell out of his chair. Wow. And I go, seriously, man, how many times have you answered that today? He's like, bro, like 100 times. Everyone keeps asking me that. And I was
don't
like,
fucking ask.
Yeah, I don't care. And then it's like you kind of can shake somebody out of the robot mode, and they're like, okay, well, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, because it's also like, I'm not here to suck the well dry.
Right, exactly.
I'm here to hang on. I really just like want to know what you're about, like really about, rather than
exactly. That's the fun. That's the fun part.
Exactly. You know what's up.
Indeed. Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much. I hope we get to do this again sometime. Happy to preach the gospel of this movie and tell my friends to see it and tweet about it. And it's a lot of fun. And you're a lot of fun. And this was cool. So thank you very much.
That's cool. This was fun.
Yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks for calling. It was a lovely chat. So.
It was very lovely.